Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Booth. I am the principal of our school ministry. It is such a treat to get to spend some time with you today and just share some of God's word with you and encourage you in your walk with Him. Early on in my relationship with Jesus, I was really struck by many verses. There are so many verses in the Bible that are just powerful, and it's alive and it's so meaningful. But there were a couple that stood out to me because they gave me something that I could do in my pursuit of Him. In James 4:8, it says, "Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you." In another version, it says, "Come close to God, and God will come close to you." And when I think about what does it mean to come close, I find myself leaning in. I imagine that there's somebody there that's wanting to tell me something, and I'm leaning in like, yeah, what is it? What do you want to tell me? And if I take that verse and I apply it to my life, what it's telling me is if I come close to God, if I lean into Him, if you lean into Him to hear what He has to say, we are promised that He is going to do the same to us. That is unbelievable, that the Creator of the universe will draw close to me if I do the same to Him. So early on in my relationship, I was wondering to myself, well, what does this mean to draw close to God? Like, what do people actually do? And I would hear people say they would have quiet times with the Lord. And I'm wondering, what does a quiet time look like? Like, what do you do and how do you do it? And I needed a little bit of the practicality of it all. And I would ask people, what do you do when you have quiet time with the Lord? And one common thing that people shared with me was journaling. And that was something that I tried to implement into my own practice, and I encourage you to do the same. It's a way of holding what God tells you every time you seek to have time with Him in one place. And I'm a little old school, so my journals are handwritten. I write. It can be something like a spiral. It doesn't have to be expensive. You may find that an app works well for you. But if you take time with the Lord every day, every other day, if you're just starting out, and it's just 5 minutes, and you read in His Word, there will be a verse that will likely strike you as, And it might just puzzle you that you want to think about it more, or it might be like, whoa, I really needed that. Just write it. Write it in your journal. Write it on your app, in your notes. What God's using that time to tell you is something that He wants you to remember, something that He wants you to practice. And what I've found is if I'm not journaling, then I forget. And I forget that precious time and that message that He had for me. So when I'm journaling, I'll keep that same book with me. I'll write notes during a church service. I'll write my notes during a podcast. And it really becomes a central location where all of God's teachings for me are in one place. And I love it because I'll go back, after a couple months have passed, and I'll go back to that journal. And something that I didn't necessarily realize at the time, God will use to encourage me, to challenge me, to remind me of something that I needed. And it may have happened months ago, but He'll use it. His Word is alive. He'll use it again. And so I just really want to encourage you, spend time with the Lord. Journal and write down what He's saying to you, even if it's just the verse. You might want to expand and write the context of it, or you might want to take the time and write how it applies to your life. All of that is great, but it's okay if you've just written down the verse also. Another thing that really encouraged me in my early time with the Lord was coming from Psalm 119:11, and in that He's telling us to hide His word in our heart. And that's just memorizing. So what I've saw often for me, memorizing can be really intimidating. And I think Satan wants us to feel intimidated. I don't think he wants us to hold God's word in our heart. So I just encourage you, just pick one. Pick one. It can be a short one. It can be just something that you decide, I'm going to memorize this, and then it's in your heart and it's with you. And I promise you, the Lord will use the words that you've put in your heart by memory later on, no matter what you're going through. You might not even know how to pray at that time, but those words that he's placed in your heart through your efforts to memorize will come, and they will be there. And that's his way of drawing close to you. So I encourage you today, spend time with him. I encourage you to consider journaling in some way that would work for you, holding his lessons for you in a certain location that's a central location, and pick a verse that you might be able to hold in your heart. That's our way of being able to draw close to him, and we can trust because he promises that he will draw close to us. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.